Hakadosh Boker Tov, Masechet Rosh Hashana Daf 9A1. We were talking about the rabbis. According to the rabbis that they argue under Bishmael, right? That they are teaching that the word Yovel hi Shnat Chamishim, Shnat Chamishim Atamoneh. You are going to count the Yovel for 50 years, right? Of the Machzor HaKodem. Via Tamoneh, but you're not going to count Shnat Chamishim Ve'achat. Sorry. Thank you. You're not going to count from the 51, which means that the year afterwards is not going to be holy. It's only the year before which is going to be holy. La Pukim, Rabbi Yehuda, this comes to exclude. Rabbi Yehuda, the 50th year counts for both ends, which means like this. You're counting 50. The 50th year is on backwards or is it on forwards? You understand? And that's very, very important. By the way, we see this in many, many different places where the day, it becomes that day. Does that day count only backwards or is it also forward? In many, many different times, right? Many times you have to count, let's say 40 days or 30 days for a Pidyon Ben. So you start counting from today. Then the next time, right? When it comes 31 days later, is it 31 days later? Is that for the backwards or is it also now for the next time as well? So there's a whole question, just like we spoke about with the kings. You remember we said a person that he started Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Does Nisan count with the year previous or the next year? And we kept on going. So the same thing, right? This pasuk is teaching us that according to Chachamim, the Shana Rishona, the Machzor Abba, is the Shana Acharesh Shnat HaChamishim. It's not the Shnat HaChamishim. Shnat HaChamishim is on backwards. It doesn't go forwards. Okay? And then it says, we are always going to be Mosifim Mechol Al HaKodesh. I don't know. We don't know. Yeah? Mosifim, no. Shemitah, but we don't know Yovel. We just spoke about Kodesh. We said that you always add on from Chol to Kodesh. Means you have Shabbat, you always have to add on to Shabbat. That's why you have to add on before Shabbat and after Shabbat. Some people think that before Shabbat I could go mamash into Shekiah. Why? Because listen, Shekiah starts Shabbat. Chas v'shalom. Mosfim mechol al kodesh. Mosfim mechol al kodesh means I have to add on to Shabbat, and that's the Doraita, by the way. Right? It's not the Rabbanan, which means that I have to add on before plus afterwards. Some people think, I saw this by the way with my own eyes. So right, somebody comes to the Maizmanim. He looks at the night time, and then he comes and he tells his father, he takes the keys of the car, and he starts going. And I'm like, Aywa, Mosefim Mechol LaKodesh is Doraita, also be Yetziata, just like Beknisata. Forget about now Rabbeinu Tam. I'm not even going, if the guy is going to be already almost Mechalesh Shabbat, I'm not going to talk about Rabbeinu Tam, you understand? But here, the guy thinks that he's keeping Shabbat. He's Mosefim Mechol ala Kodesh. Okay, so it says over here, on Mosefim Mechol ala Kodesh Minal, and how do we know this concept? The time as we learned to the Braita, Becharish V'Katzir Tishbot. What does that mean by the Becharish V'Katzir Tishbot? Rabbi Kiva says this pasuk is actually coming to teach us on the Isur of working your land on Shemitah. We're obviously not talking about the 7th year, about the Charisha and the Ktsira, the plowing and the reaping. As it already says, Hashanah Shavit on the 7th year, which means do not do anything. We're talking about the Charisha of Erev Shavit that goes into the Shavit, which means the one of Erev Shemitah that comes in the 6th year, which is coming into the 7th year. The Katzir Shavit, or the reaping of Shavit, which goes out to the 8th year. And still, it still has the Kiddusha of Shavit. So from there we learn you have to be Mosif, Mechol, ala Kodesh. Because here the Kodesh is we're not talking about Shabbat anymore, we're talking about Shemitah, and you have to add on from before, and you have to add on afterwards. That's Mosifim Mechol, ala Kodesh. Rabbi Shmuel says, Ma Charish Reshut, just like Charish is going to be Reshut, Af Katzir Reshut. So to Katzir is Reshut. Right? Yatsa Katzir HaOmer, this comes to exclude Katzir HaOmer, Shu Mitzvah. Meaning the Katzir HaOmer, since it's a mitzvah, the Torah obligated to do it, to do it the night before the bringing of the Korban Omer. So since it's a mitzvah, it pushes off the Shabbat right in front of it. And if it comes out on Shabbat, you're allowed to actually come and reap it on Shabbat. It means mamash, it pushes off Shabbat. So the night of the Omer, they come, they reap the barley, and then they're going to bring in the next morning for Korban Omer, for Sefirat Omer. Remember, that's what we call the Omer. Sefirat Omer comes from that word, right? And also Yashan, Chadash, everything has to do with that, the 16th of Nisan. Once it passes the 16th of Nisan, you're allowed to eat all the Chadash products that were from the previous year, right? This all has to do with that since it's a mitzvah, it pushes off Shabbat. Okay? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Ishmael, according to Shtat Rabbi Ishmael, how does he know that we have to add on from Chol LaKodesh? So says the Gemara, he learns it from Kippur. Why? What's written by Kippur? You're going to afflict yourself on the 9th of the month. Yachol, I would have thought to say betisha on the 9th of Tishri. That's when it starts, right? That means I would have thought to say that on the 9th it starts. On the 9th of Kippur, which is the 10th. If it's going to be the 10th, I would have thought to say that even when it becomes dark. What does betisha come to teach you? You have to start when it's still day. That's why even the night of Kippur, right? Some people make a mistake. They think that when does the fast start? Shikiyah. Again, it's a mistake. You have to add on before. You don't have to add on from a lakanerot. I've seen that as well. Some people, they add on from a lakanerot, 18 minutes before. You don't have to add on 18 minutes before, but you do have to add on before Kippur. The fast starts before Kippur. It doesn't have to start the 18 minutes before Kippur, right? Before the, like lakanerot, but it does start a few minutes before.
Is that why if
right?
you look at like 3 different calendars?
Yes,
like
exactly. You'll say different times. Right? Milamed. So from there, from Kippur, we learn Shemosifim Mechol ala Kodesh. You will add on from Chol ala Kodesh. But that's only the beginning of Kippur. How do we know that also when it finishes Kippur, the same thing? Right? What does that mean, Erev Aderev? Ad Erev is until the next night. So therefore, also the next night you have to add on. But that's only by Kippur. How do you know by Shabbat? Meaning we're only learning this Yisod by Yom Kippur. How do you know you have to be Mosim Kodesh also on Shabbat? Tishbetu. Tishbetu teaches you that it also has to do with Shabbat. How do you know about Yom Tov? Shabbatechem. Because remember, Yom Tov is also called Shabbat. You remember I told you that last time. Shabbat Shabbaton Yilachem. Right? Umimachorata Shabbat. Right? Tispiru 50 yom. The next day of Shabbat, you're going to count 50 days. The Tzedokim learn Shabbat is literally. So therefore, they always start counting Sefirat HaOmer on Sunday. We learn Mimachorata Shabbat means that Shabbat is Yom Tov. So therefore, it's always after the first day of Pesach. You're going to count the 50 days. So therefore, Shabbatechem is Chag. So it comes out one more time. How do you learn Tosefet Mechol HaKodesh? You learn Tosefet Mechol HaKodesh from Kippur. That's Knisato. Right? Me'erev ad erev, b'yetziato. When it finishes Kippur. Then you go to Shabbat. How do you know Shabbat? It's written Tishvetu. How do you know Yom Tov? Shabbatechem. Shabbatechem. Each one of these words is teaching you that you have to be Mosif Mechol HaKodesh. So we start from Kippur. We started from Knisato of Kippur. We continue with Yetziato of Kippur. We continue with Shabbat. And we continue with Yom Tov.
Does that mean that we have to?
It says, so what's the case? Anytime that there's a shvut, we're going to be Mosefim Mechol ala Kodesh. What does Rebbe Kiva now do with this pasuk? So he says, he needs it for this. You fast on the 9th of Tishri. Nobody fasts on the 9th of Tishri, right? We fast on the 10th. To teach you, anybody that eats and drinks on the 9th of Tishri, it's as if, right? 9b. It's as if that he fasted and eat on this. So this is what Rabbi Kiva was again. According to the other man, Damar, he was learning the Tishri that you have to do Masivim Mechol ala Kodesh. According to the other Shito, we already learned you have to be Masivim Mechol ala Kodesh, but it wasn't from Kippur, it was from Shemitah. You understand? So now here, according to this man, Damar, so what do you do with Tishri? To teach you that if you eat on the 9th, you're fasting for the 9th and the 10th. It's considered that you fasted for the 9th and the 10th of Tishri. That's what it is. Okay? What? What do you mean? How do you explain it? Why don't you explain it? We learned in a Braita. Yovelhi. What does it mean, Yovelhi? Even though, right, the Bnei Yisrael did not come and they did not do the Shemitah, which means it doesn't go back. And even if they didn't do the Tkiyat Shofar, right, which means Yovel comes automatically, even if they didn't do something to actually make it into Yovel. Meaning, even though they didn't give back the lands, and even though they didn't do the Tkiyat Shofar, Yovel is Yovel. So Yachol, I would have thought to say, even though they didn't come and send the Eved Ivris, it's still going to be the same way. Tamulomar comes to teach you, right? He. What does it mean, he? These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosef Omer. So Rabbi Yosef Omer, Rabbi Yosef says, Yoveli. What does it mean here? What does it mean, Yoveli? Afal pi shelo shamtu v'abli shelo shilchu, yachol avli shelo taku. Tamulomar, he. Meaning like this. According to everybody, Yovel is Yovel. Now the question is, even though they didn't do the Shemitat Karkaot, which means they didn't give back the Karkaot to each other, right? Where there was, was when you sell a land afterwards it comes back to you. Even though they didn't send, so the first mandama was, I would have thought that what happens if they didn't do the shiluach ivri? The Eved Ivri goes free, scot-free. Yeah? 7 for the Yuvel, 50 years, right? Now what happens is, that's all of a sudden, now I would have thought, say, listen, they didn't return the lands, that's one thing. They didn't do Tkiyat Shofar, it's still Yovel. What about if they didn't send the Eved Ivri? And so the Gemara, he teaches you that it's still Yovel, even though they didn't do that. Rabbi Yosef argues, and he says, no. Shiluach Eved Ivri is not as important as the Tkiyat Shofar. Meaning, even though they didn't return the lands, and even though they didn't return the Eved Ivris, I would have thought that it's not Yovel unless you do Tkiyat Shofar. Kamashmanan Tamunumar he, that even though they didn't do that, it's still considered Yovel. So Yovel is Yovel no matter what, even though they didn't do anything. So says the Gemara, since one pasuk is adding in and one pasuk is excluding, because the word Yovel is coming to teach you that Torah Yovel is even without all the halachot of Yovel, and the he is coming to exclude. So why do I say Yovel yav bishelo shilchu ve'en Yovel elen kentaku? Why am I going to say that it's Yovel even though they didn't send the Eved Ivris, but it's not Yovel if they didn't do Tkiyat Shofar? Why? So it says lefi she'efshar le'olam b'lo shiluach avadim, ye'efshar le'olam b'lo Tkiyat Shofar. You know why? You could have a case where even if you didn't do the shiluach of the avadim, you didn't set the slaves free, it's still going to be okay. But you cannot have the world without Tkiyat Shofar. You need the shofar, and therefore because of that, they said that maybe it's not going to be Chal Yovel if there was no shofar. That means shofar was so important. It's impossible. How could you have it without the shofar? Without the shofar is nothing. Davar acher, another explanation, right? Zo mesura lebedin, vezo eno mesura lebedin. The concept of mitzvah of tkiyat shofar is in the shliach bedin to do it, but shiluach avadim has nothing to do with the bedin. It's on every single master. Meaning every single master has to send his students, his slaves. You understand? But it's not on the bedin. The bedin is the one that does the tkiyat shofar. That's why the tkiyat shofar is much more important than in every. I cannot force you to send your Eved Ivris free. You're supposed to do it. What am I going to do? You understand? But I could force you to do the what's it called? I could force you to do what we mentioned before, which is basically the tkiyat shofar. Because the shofar is a bedin. Again, even if they have the power, but it's not the same. It's not mesura lebedin. It's mesura the thing. Afterwards, they're going to start forcing one by one. That's something else. What? Yes. My davar acher. What does it mean? Another explanation. I would have thought to say right. He says what? It can't be that there's going to be one person that he's supposed to send him, right? And it could be that somebody for sure sent their Eved Ivri free, and this is going to be given to Bedin. And the mitzvah of shiluach avadim is not given to Bedin, but rather it's in kol yachid v'yachid. So bishma Rabbi Yosef, I understand according to Rabbi Yosef, k'dekamar ta'ameh. Just like it says the reasoning, what's the reasoning of Rabbi Yehuda? What is the reason why he says that it's dafka shiluach avadim is me'akev and not any other mitzvah? Meaning, according to him, why is shiluach avadim much more important than tkiyat shofar, than the hachzarat karkaot, than giving back the lands? Why is that more important? So he says, it says in a pasuk, kratem deror ba'aretz. What does it mean? Which means when you say kratem deror ba'aretz, the word is only going to be the previous thing, but not the previous thing. Which means the milah he is going on ukratem deror. What is the ukratem deror? So ukratem deror is going back. That's what it says. What is me'akev, right? The which is chal al taviru shofar v'chol artechem. It's not on anything else. So according to him, it's only going to be on the ukratem deror and not taviru shofar. Remember, there's three things in Yovel. You give back the lands, you blow the shofar, and the avadim go free. There are three halachot. Ukratem deror is konje, that everyone goes free, right? Taviru shofar is ket shofar, right? And I forgot the pasuk when you're giving back the land, right? Okay, I remember the word. Right? Yeah, the Eved Olam. The Eved Olam goes free on the 50th year on Shemitah, on Yovel. Okay, so now what happens is like this. He says, what was the previous thing right before Yovel? He Shnat 50 Shana. Ukratem deror. It wasn't on the Taviru Shofar or on that Shnat 50 Shana. It goes all, Vechitim Kirum Kalamitecha, right? No. It goes on the last thing. It doesn't go on the previous things. So the last thing that was mentioned was Ukratem deror. So according to him, Ukratem deror, which is calling it konje, calling it chofshi, that is much stronger than the Taviru Shofar and the Achzarat HaKarkaot. Okay? So the Chule Alma deror is Lashon Cherut. According to everybody, right? Deror is Lashon Cherut. My masha. How do we know that though? The Tanya was learned to write the end Deror Lashon Cherut. I'm reading Lashon Deror. Kemedayer bedaira. A person that's living, right? Bechol makom diur. Umovil schora bechol medina. He's moving around in the merchandise in every single place. So Amar Rav Chiya bar Abba Yochanan says Rav Chiya bar Abba Yochanan. Zudi Rav Yehuda Rav Yosef. These are the words of Rav Yosef. Aval Chachamim omrim, but Chachamim say Shloshtan me'akvot bo. The three of them are going to be me'akev. Kasavri because they hold. Mikra nidrash lefanav lifnei falav v'ulachadav. The pasuk could actually be used not only from before, and even afterwards. Meaning the machloka between them is, I have a pasuk, right? And I'm going to come and to exclude something. Do I exclude immediately that which was written before it? Or can I also include the things which are before that as well, and even something which is afterwards? So because of that, that's a machloka between them. The first one, Daman held that it could only be the immediate thing which was written before. So that was the Ukratem Deror. That's what it's coming to. That means Shiloh Chavadim is more important than everything else. More important than Tkiyat Shofar, more important than the returning of the lands. But according to the other one, no, it's all the same. That's why the Tkiyat Shofar could be on anything. So V'aktiv Yovel says 1 second, but it's written Yovel. Yovel comes to include, even though you didn't do all the mitzvot. So he says no. Haud afilu b'chutz haaretz. There, the minhag of Shiloh Chavadim applies even in chutz haaretz. That means when it says Yovel, it's coming to include. What is it coming to include? That even in chutz haaretz and diaspora, you have a mitzvah to let free the slaves. So v'aktiv ba'aretz. It's written Yovel here is ba'aretz. So Yochol Yishuvah. It's written ba'aretz, but it means only in Eretz Yisrael. And so the Gemara, how bizman noheg deror ba'aretz, so maybe chutz haaretz. So noheg ba'aretz, and meaning like this: Eretz Yisrael is the trigger. Meaning, as long as there's Yovel in Eretz Yisrael, there's Yovel in chutz haaretz. If there's no Yovel in Eretz Yisrael, there's no Yovel in chutz haaretz. But the Yovel is the trigger in Eretz Yisrael, but it's a trigger. But it also applies in chutz haaretz as well. Velendintia, right? The two dots. We said that Echad Tishri is also going to be for the 13 years, for the 3 years, right? Shalosh not our love netiot, or the planting of the trees. Remember, netia is by trees, zorea is seeds. Menala, and how do we know this? For 3 years, it's going to be arelim. In the 4th year, we learn shana from Tishri. It's written in the pasuk, mereshit Hashanah. So we're talking about Rosh Hashana and Echad Tishri, and it's written that means just like Shana on the last pasuk is starting from Echad Tishri, so too the Shana is talking about on Orla. So where do we learn? When does Orla start? On Rosh Hashana, Tishri, Rosh Chodesh Tishri. That's when it starts, the concept of Rosh Hashana of Orla. So says the Gemara, the same question that we asked already yesterday. Why don't we learn Shana from Nisan? Nisan, it also says Shana. It says, right, Rishonu lechodshei Hashanah. What do we answer? Chodshei. Remember? What do we answer? The months. Right, what does that mean? That means Shana and Sheni Machodashim, Shana Sheni Machodashim, and Shana Sheni Machodashim, Shana Sheni Machodashim. By Nisan, it's written, Rishonu lachem lechodshei Hashanah. Doesn't only say Shana, it says Chodshei, the months. Right? So therefore, because of that, it doesn't say only years. By the concept of Rosh Hashana Tishri, it's written Mereshit Shana Dacharit Shana. Shana, it's written only Shana without Chodashim. So I'm going to do a Gezerah Shava, Shana to Shana that does not have Chodashim, and I'm not going to add in Shana to Shana that does have Chodashim. Okay? Tanu Rabbanan.
Yesterday is done.
Yes, I know. That's why I asked him. But there was only one person here that knew it. I'm sure that the doctor knew it, but I just no? Okay, fine. Tanu Rabbanan. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita. Yeah, he's also a doctor. Yeah, food. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita. Yeah, echad hanotea ve'echad hamavrich ve'echad hamarkiv. Yeah, no, one doctor sends to the other doctor. Yeah, yeah, he says echad hanotea ve'echad hamavrich ve'echad hamarkiv. Erev Shavi. If somebody's going to be notea, what is notea? He's going to plant a tree. Mavrich, what is mavrich? He's going to put the branch into the ground, and that way he's going to come up another tree. That's called mavrich. Markiv, what is markiv? Harkava, grafting, I think it's in English. Grafting. Grafting. Right? That means mavrich is you take the branch up here, you put it in the ground, and now a new tree is going to come up from it. The grafting is I'm going to take 2 branches from 2 different trees, okay? And then they're going to come and it's going to make something else. So all these things, if you did this on Erev Shavit, which means before Shemitah, 30 Yom Lifnei Rosh Hashana, as long as it was 30 days before Rosh Hashana, Alta Lo Shana, it's considered a year for Orla. That means people think that Orla is 3 years, day to day. Here we just learned that as long as you did it 30 days before Rosh Hashanah, comes Rosh Hashanah, it's the first year of Orla.
2 years and 1 month.
Yeah. And you're allowed to come and you're allowed to be mekayem, and you're not chayav to uproot it, because at the end of the day, it's not considered an etiyot that you did it in Isur Shemitah. But if it was less than 30 days before Rosh Hashana, lo alta lo shana, so it doesn't count as a year, so you lost. Because now you're going to need 3 years and a month, right? And you're not allowed to keep it in Shvit because you just planted the Isur. Because since it was done within the 30 days, that's why it's going to be a Isur. We're going to have a chart and everything for tomorrow, Be'ezat Hashem, and we continue tomorrow.